Hello and welcome to episode 94 of When the Flames Go Up, the ATFC podcast. Shots following up their opening win with an opening defeat at home to Hartlepool this weekend. So we discussed that on the podcast. We've got Guy and CJ on the main pod with a contribution from Julian in voice notes. We go on to discuss the away game at Kidderminster at the weekend, as well as some National League roundup news. As a certain team are bottom of the league, thought it might be a good time to mention, as well as going on to talk about the transfer embargo and the trees. So stick around for that near the end. As always, email the podcast, atfcpodcast@gmail.com. And comment wherever you see this, and I'm sure I'll pick it up. I am not very good at picking up the comments, seemingly, so I'll do a longer introduction at some point with some of the best comments that I've seen on our stuff. So yeah, enjoy this episode, and as always, up the shots. So the Shots followed up their 1-0 away win at Boston in the opening game of the season with a 1-0 home defeat against Hartlepool United. A Corey McCowan goal in the second half with about 12 minutes of normal time remaining was enough to seal the deal, despite Basil Tuma winning a penalty in the 88th minute and Denanga putting a penalty over the bar on the high street end to keep it at 1-0 and deny Scott Davies his first point at home as Aldershot manager. Tonight on the pod, we've got CJ and Guy. So we're going to get their thoughts. Guy is still in the UK. He was witnessing live action down at the Rec at the weekend. And CJ is still freezing. You'll be. I don't know if you're glad to know, but it might help. I don't know, psychologically listen to this podcast if you're currently hot. He's going to bring some chill vibes. That's what I'm saying. Guy, I'll come to you first. Your overall impressions of the game and how you thought Aldershot fared.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Will. So yeah, for me, it's, as I said, I think last week, this was going to probably be one of the few games that I was actually going to get to see live this season because we're still in the UK. So from next week onwards, I'm going to be having to mute you guys, on match days to be able to actually, do the catch up. Just to start with, I mean, we arrived, beautiful day, like late summer. These early games are great because they don't really matter too much. We're not at the business end of the season. I made the mistake of booking tickets behind the dugout, having not thought through how high the dugouts are these days. So that was a little bit awkward, poor visibility, but it can't. I guess I've learned my lesson there, I suppose. Also, what was great was a 2,865 attendance, which was sort of, and that had around 300 odd coming from Hartlepool. So that was, within the 2,500 that I'd asked for last week. And it's great that we got that kind of turnout at this early stage of the season, what with the summer holidays still being going on, but also just a sense of, I think, reflects some of the positive vibes that are going on around this team, that it's new and that we're excited to see what's happening. I think I said at the time last week as well that I was hopeful that we would sort of put out the same starting 11, simply because as the season goes on with injuries and sanctions, we're going to probably sort of find players having to fit into particular places that they may not be so familiar with. So it was good to see us with the same starting 11. Unfortunately, we did lose Gilbert quite early, and I think it was the first 15 minutes or so. So we had Frimpong come on for him, and he certainly showed pace in the first half. Him along with Tuma and Sander, they were the ones that stood out for me the most. And in the first half, it was a bit scrappy. Neither team looked like they were going to score, but neither team looked like they were going to concede either. And so given that Hartlepool has been sort of seen as one of the teams that to watch in this year, potentially being on the top 6 or so, I thought we lived quite well with them, that we seemed to be keeping up with them up until half time. And certainly it continued into the second half. I think the first 10, 15 minutes, you could just about start seeing us getting on top. until Hartlepool made about a series of substitutions. I think it was about 60 minutes in, at which point Sander was pretty much muted after that. And then you started to see the tide turn somewhat. Now, I know you want to talk about whether or not the goal could have been stopped, but frankly, if you'd been there, you would have seen that Hartlepool were doing very much more of the running, and we were on our back foot by this point. So when the goal did come, there was a certain degree of inevitability, and it sort of followed after. Hayes had made a very good save, actually, I thought. Given that, we were only sort of one down, and when the penalty was given for Tuma being knocked over in the box, I think we were hopeful that we might actually be able to snatch a point. It was very disappointing that Dinanga just, blasted it over the bar and didn't even make the keeper, try to make the keeper make a save. That said, had we got a point, I think we'd have been lucky to have done so. I didn't feel that we were really making significant numbers of chances. And I think this is the main point I want to probably make about what my concern was at the end of this game. Last week, I talked about how positive I was that the back four, the back line, had seemed to be a lot more physical than it was last season, and certainly you saw this week as well that they were putting bodies on the line, blocking shots. So I'm very happy with the back line. I guess my question is, what do we do? What are we doing up front? Because we've got these very nippy wingers and midfielders like Tuma and Sander, and they do go past players. The problem is, who is their target man? Because Denanga, I know that you guys were quite excited about him coming in. He doesn't strike me as sort of a big presence like Effiong we had a few years back, if you remember. Someone who could sort of bulldoze and knock people over and get the ball into the back of the net. Denanga seems perhaps a little bit more sort of a silky player. And so that does leave me worrying a little bit as to, who do we have up front who could be solid, a target man. And basically, I know it sounds a little bit old fashioned, but, having a big, physical presence up top, would be quite useful. So I think maybe there's still some work to be done there. The last thing to say is I took my 6-year-old. There were tears after the Hartlepool goal. There were tears again after the penalty, and there were tears again once the final whistle went. Very unfortunate. He's now gone 3 games, two on the road and 1 at home, where he hasn't seen Aldershot score yet. And I have been trying to assure him that it will come, but when it's going to happen, I have no idea.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. He's kind of like using all his tears up now for the 10-year run to the championship or something. So remember this penalty miss. Don't worry, there'll be plenty more to smile about soon. But yes, I mean, I agree with you. The going forward thing, I think we mentioned about John Gilbert. Without a John Gilbert, what do we do to create things? And obviously, him going off in the first half probably does stunt, hamstring us a little bit. I didn't mean to say hamstring if it actually is his hamstring, but it's the only adjective that came to my head. Yeah, so I guess we'll find out if we can get Gilbert back. Obviously, we've got a midweek game against Fulham under 21s to see if I'm not sure. I presume he might get a few minutes to test how it is. But yeah, without him, I was slightly concerned. And yeah, probably backs up what you're saying there. CJ, I'll come to you. Do you see it in the same way, and your overall impressions of the game?
Yeah, I will. Thanks. Yeah, I think Guy summarised it pretty well. Obviously, like if you talk about the goal and stuff, Hayes obviously made a brilliant save, but I think the initial shot could have been closed down quicker. And then like Adam Malaki's been left with 2, so like Sanders stood there watching the overlapping run, and Maliki's almost in a weird situation where he's like, I got to stay with the ball, but then the runners ran past me, and I'm in the 2v1 situation. So you kind of want him to engage with the ball, but if he engages with the ball any quicker, then he's just going to set the guy down the line off, and then he's just going to do the same ball across anyway. We might have been able to defend that a bit better just because bodies would have got in, but I think overall, I think the performance was pretty positive, I think. But I think the biggest concern at the moment is we are still quite unknown. Like I listened to Lee Clark's interview afterwards, and they wasn't even aware of Aladunjoy's throw-ins. So like when he came on and we were just lobbing balls in the box, like Lee Clark said afterwards, he goes, we didn't prepare for that. We had no idea they had that in their like locker, which is a bit of a shock considering that it's probably one of the most trending things in the last like 6 weeks on social media. So the fact that no one at Hartlepool's picked that up is actually a surprise to me. Yeah, I think Tuma and Sander are obviously exciting. Are they going to get found out soon though, with how direct and quick they are? I think obviously Hartlepool made the change quite quickly in the second half to get the right back off and get the next right back on, and that kind of nullified Sander a little bit. Obviously Tuma coming across to the left hand side to win the penalty. I think there is some versatility there, and I think that, like that we will see them chop and change throughout the year. And I think that's what's going to be needed to sort of get through that sort of period of them being sussed out a little bit. I think Stickland was unbelievable at the back, considering it was his first game at home, local lad. He was probably nervous, co-captain, and I thought the back four were excellent for the most part. Obviously, bar the goal where we probably could have been tighter and worked together a bit more. But look, I think it's a really positive sign. I think if Denanga takes the penalty and puts it in, we've got a striker there that's got off the mark straight away. I'm absolutely devastated he didn't. I was pretty much almost celebrating when the penalty was won. I thought, Marcus Denanga, here we go. It's showtime. 20 goals this season. Here come the playoffs. And then all of a sudden he misses and hits the high street, and I'm like, oh my god, here comes National League South. So it is almost that spectrum of what's going on. I think Denanga will score goals. I think his link-up play was very good in the first half. He went a bit quiet in the second. Marcus Wiley was a bit of a live character when he came on. I think the only thing would probably be he came on too late to go two up top. We could have probably done that sooner. But yeah, look, Hartlepool, like Guy said, are probably one of the title favourites. They've got the money this year. They've got the attacking force. I thought we nullified Nolan really well, and I thought Harris was really nullified as well. So yeah, I think up to about the hour mark, I thought we were pretty comfortable. It was only obviously McEwen came on and they brought a bit of versatility to the game. They changed the right back, so Sander wasn't seeing success, and that's what sort of pinned us back a little bit. Obviously, it would have been interesting to see if Gilbert could have played longer. He's a quality player. Whether we could have picked something out earlier in terms of a goal.
Yes, absolutely. I suppose, yeah, the Marcus Wiley making his debut for the shots. But yeah, came on for Frimpong, who'd come on for Gilbert. So I guess, yeah, I mean, he probably thought he could have done it earlier, maybe, but it would have been slightly harsh on Frimpong to drag him off after 60 or something and give him, yeah, I guess 45 minutes or so on the pitch. But yeah, I mean, I as I was told these boys, I was just following it on the radio at the very end, so I've not really had much of a handle on it. But it's been very, very good to hear the kind of general comments about the performance and the effort levels and the overall kind of feeling at the Rec. I think that's been nice to catch up on and hear Scott Davies's interview, and I think we're all rooting in the same direction. And I know we've mentioned it before about, or like last week, I think, about fans coming back into the fold that had maybe, for whatever reason, under previous management or previous ownership, for example, that this does feel like a bit of a fresh start. And I'm so ready for Scott Davies to get a home win. And yeah, hopefully he can do it in 2 weeks' time against Harrogate on a Friday night, which does, I mean, I was a bit dubious when I saw that on the fixture list, but now it's, a nice warm Friday night down at the Rec. Lights just coming on during the warm-ups. So yeah, well, we've got more games in between then. Anyway, so at this point, I'm going to throw to Julian, who's sent in a voice note to get his thoughts on the Hartlepool game.
I will. Just my thoughts reflecting on the weekend's game against Hartlepool. And I guess one thing that does please me is that that's one of the games last season that we wouldn't have been anywhere near. It was one of those games that would have fitted into that 7 or 8 run defeat where we were just not getting anywhere near the leaders. And for large parts of this game, we were not only level with them, but still playing on the front foot, still looking a little bit tighter in defence. And the game could have gone anyway, especially after the end of the first half. I felt that it was definitely there for the taking. Full credit to Lee Clark and Hartlepool. He made some good changes at half time, and he just tweaked the midfield a little bit. And as the game grew on into the second half, they started to exert a little bit of dominance. And in the end, it did feel as if we were not hanging on, but that we were going to concede at some point. And of course, that did eventually happen. Great chance at the end, obviously, to get back into it. And it just wasn't to be. I feel really sorry for Dinanga, as that goal would have meant so much. It would have got him off the mark, confidence flying, shots back in the game. Who knows where it would have ended up, but it wasn't to be. And in the end, you could argue that actually through their second half performance that Hartlepool did deserve the 3 points. But yeah, going right back to the start, really pleased the fact that we're competing in these games, this sort of game now. And with the view of the first two games, I think there's lots to be excited about for sure. I love the partnership in the middle between Odesanya and Bornice. I love that partnership. Strickland and Oshilaja are looking good at the back, and Tuma and Sander are looking good up front on the widths. There's something that I would love to see even better on Saturday at Kidderminster, and that is the end product from Sander. He has really worried the defences in these first two games, and if he can just add a finishing touch or an assist, then he's going to be an absolute force. And again, credit to Tuma on Saturday. I thought his running forward, and obviously he won the penalty too. All credit to him. He looks. They both look really dangerous moving forward, which I don't think we had that last year. Looking forward to the Kidderminster game on Saturday. This is definitely one of those games at the start of the season that we would be looking for 3 points on the road. So got no reason why that shouldn't happen. We continue to apply ourselves the way we have for the first two games, and just add that little bit of cutting edge up top. Hopefully Dinanga scores his first goal of the season. We come away with 3 points. So looking forward to that one. And then following on from Kiddie, we've then got another home game against a really tough team. So, yep, looking to get 3 points from Kiddie, and a return of 6 points from 9 would be, I think, a really good start. Thanks, Will.
Grand. Okay, so now we've got time to move on to the next game for the shots in the league, which is Kidderminster Harriers away. It's a 12:30 kickoff for all National League games this weekend. Not sure exactly why, but I presume to kind of get around the 3 p.m. blackout, which starts this week as the Premier League returns. Kidderminster started with a 3-0 home loss to Hornchurch on the opening day. They followed that up with a 1-0 win over Eastleigh at the weekend. Levi Amanchi, who was on loan for them last season from Gateshead, is also on loan from Gateshead this season. He scored in the second half to win on that one. The captain by David Davies, who was that was great to see. He was just nice to see players that I know. Jordan Hugill this weekend, David Davies this weekend. 7-year stint at Birmingham between 2014 and 2021. They're managed by Paul Watton, who joined in May after Adam Murray left for relegated Barrow. We'll meet them next month. They beat South Shields in the North playoff final after finishing third, just behind them. Generally tipped to go straight back down amongst the newly promoted teams and those already in the league. But as we know, this league is crazy in parts. So we'll find out a little bit more as we get further along in the season. The last visit to Kidderminster was 2024, 2 years ago. Yeah. Ended in a 4-2 defeat. Shots went ahead through Josh Stokes. Jasper Sheikh made his one and only appearance for the Shots in that game, replacing Jordi van Stappershoff, It was also in that weird streak of away games where we played West Brom away, obviously a 4-1 defeat, away to Bishop Stortford in the FA Trophy, a 6-1 defeat, and then we went to Kidderminster and lost 4-2. Back in the crazy days. Ex-shots for Kidderminster. Callum Stewart has signed from Shrewsbury. He was obviously on loan from the Shots last season, scored once in 10 appearances. Lewis Walker had a loan spell with us many years ago, but more recently remembered for his stints at Woking, doing precious little. I think he scored he might have scored a couple against us. All right, I'm probably forgetting him. And Cian Harris is on loan from Forest Green Rovers. I think he played in the first game, didn't play in the second. So we'll see if he pops up on Saturday. Guy, I'll come to you first. Your thoughts on Kidderminster at the weekend?
Yeah, thanks, Will. So, I mean, before we start, you mentioned South Shields with Kidderminster going up against South Shields. Keep in mind as well that poor South Shields. They played Kidderminster 3 times last season and lost all of them. So, they really suffered there. That's my little sort of token nugget of information, pointless information for the fans. But yeah, you sort of summarised quite neatly. Sort of the changes that have taken place at Kidderminster and of course the most recent game. But I mean, just to go in a little bit more detail, just the Kidderminster itself, there's been, I think they've retained around 12 of their players from last season, but they've seen about 17 go and 10 come in. Angus MacDonald, I think, has been a sort of a standout signing because he's been an EFL and Championship player. They brought him in for centre back just a few days before the start of the season, and so he's sort of one to watch. I was actually taking a look at what the Kidderminster Harriers supporters and fans were talking about on their own sort of equivalent of Shots Web in preparation for today's episode, and just to get a sense of how they feel about where their team is. And they were talking very positively about the back line that they had. They put 4 out. Along with a young goalkeeper, I think he's 19. But they were talking very positively, particularly on the left side, Richard Faki and Owen Evans. And Owen Evans, interestingly, does some good work, overlapping with Devine, who's on sort of the left side of midfield. So maybe that's an area that we do need to be looking at in terms of where Kidderminster might threaten us. Lewis Walker, their centre forward, apparently does some very good link-up play, but his at the game again with Eastleigh, his passing was a little bit wayward. So hopefully we might see that happen, or at least we would like to try and disrupt his game a little bit there. I think you're also talking about Davis in midfield. Apparently he's very strong in the air, good at breaking up play from the defensive point of view. So we need to watch out for him there as well. Currently the odds are very much in Kidderminster's favour. They see the betting companies seem to see a win for Kidderminster as more likely, with a draw, more likely than an Aldershot win. So I think, again, we're sort of following the same pattern that we've had with the Boston game a couple of the other week, in which, we're an unknown quantity. And so the tendency is to go for, the home team because we are such a new side. And I think that's probably so. With Kidderminster, I think the expectation, as you said, they were expected to go straight back down. I think their fans are a little bit more confident than that, and they seem to feel that that they do, that they can compete at this level. So what are we looking for here? I mean, obviously, we're not going to be playing a team like Hartlepool. We're going to perhaps be playing a team around our level. So. I suppose I'm looking for a draw, but given what we know about what we saw at the weekend with the game against Hartlepool, there's a danger that if they can read us well and they can nullify our very fast and pacey midfielders, then that could create a problem for us, particularly when it comes to trying to link up with the men at the front. So I guess for me, lots of work to be done on the training fields this week, along with the set pieces, but let's go for a draw. That's what I suspect.
Yes, yeah, draws does seem the choice to go for. Didn't we start last season with a win, a loss, and a draw? I think I seem to remember it being quite a nice, neat start to the season. But yeah, in the same way that Kidderminster are tipped to go down, so are Aldershot. And if you listen to fans now, I mean, not that we are saying playoffs. I mean, I know CJ's mentioned them, and I'm sure Julian will mention at some point. But we have got a more positive view than the odds makers in general. CJ, your thoughts ahead of this one at the weekend?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting tie. I think the one thing you missed out on as well is the other Aldershot, ex-Aldershot man there is Dean Holdsworth as director of football. So there's a blast from the past for you. So yeah, so I think I think Paul Wotton's a really good manager. I think obviously he had real good success at Torquay, so he's probably going to know majority of the players anyway. So he'll be probably more prepared than what most will be in the league in terms of what they're coming up against. He would have faced Scott Davies previously multiple times. He would have played the Scott Davies team. He would have played against majority of the players. He would be aware of them. So I think this weekend will be an actual tougher test than we actually think. And I also think like Kidderminster will be going into it obviously in a ray of sunshine from the last result. So they'll be looking to probably take all 3 points, as will we, because I think we also have nothing to lose going into this game. I think like it's almost like guys kind of like alluded to, is that it's almost a free hit at the start of the season. You kind of like trying to find your way. We're trying to play this attacking front foot football, and I think if we can play as well as we did in that first half against Hartlepool, I think if we can start that well, obviously fingers crossed Gilbert's available as well. I think we can really take the game to them. We've got like we shouldn't be playing with any fear at the moment. This will be the toughest test, I think, in terms of what we face. I think Hartlepool kind of came in uneasy, obviously not knowing what to expect. But they're also one of the top teams in the league, so they found a way. Where Kidderminster probably don't have that danger and attacking threat that Hartlepool did. So I think it will be a more even kill. It will probably be two teams in and around it, mid low table sides. So I think it on the scale, I'm reasonably confident, but there is also that nagging doubt because we haven't been fluent in front of goal just as yet. Obviously we scored goals in pre-season, but we were playing like step 4, 5, 6 teams. So you kind of it's on the balance, I think, on the cusp of either us opening the floodgates and Denanga scoring and Tuma and Sander just going gung ho, or we're in that fine tuning balance. I think. I don't think we're going to concede many. Touch wood, because I feel like we're pretty well balanced at the moment. I think the team looks good overall. But yeah, like Paul Wotton's teams, that they're well organised, they're well structured. Scotty Davies will know, and I'm excited. I think if we go into the game with the mentality we did with Hartlepool, I don't see us not coming away with 3 points. Really, it's just obviously whether we score early, we can maintain it. I think that's the big thing. Because we got goal scorers in the team now. Like you look at that, like we spoke about it against Boston. You look at that front four. If we play like that second half we did against Boston and the start of the game with Hartlepool, like we should have quite a lot of control in games for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Scott Davies after the game at the weekend, talking about kind of decision making and the final ball, these kind of things, which are, but I mean, in my head, at least, they're like training ground things. Like they're things that, as you learn and you're playing professional football more, you're coming up against stronger defenders. You do have to, your chances are going to be less. You've got to make the most of every time you go forward. And obviously, we've got two very raw wingers at the moment that are just, are great to watch. And there is going to be a moment where it clicks and they, Sanders shots, have got power when they get to the keeper, for example. He's mishitting them at the moment. So I'm sure we'll see it, and hopefully we do at the weekend. I know it's only 2 games in, but it feels like a nice time to do a little. We didn't do many last season, where we talked about the actual National League around us. I know we're an Aldershot podcast, but sometimes it's nice to look elsewhere, particularly this week because Woking are bottom of the league. So Woking followed up their first game of was a 3-0 home loss to Sutton with a 2-0 away loss at Gateshead. I mean, no harm in going to Gateshead and losing, but no goals in the first 2 games for Woking. So they're bottom. Also Barrow the only newcomer to the league. So anyone that got promoted or relegated to not get a point in the first two games. And most recently, that was a 2-1 home defeat to Hornchurch, who have started off with 2 wins. Kidderminster, as we mentioned earlier, they beat them at home 3-0. So that puts them joint top with Harrogate, who have also won their first 2 games and come down to the shots next weekend on Friday night. Any thoughts, going, CJ, on the National League as it stands at the moment? Any other surprises that I'm missing out?
Yeah, so I think, added to what you've just said, Will, I think the ones that stand out for me at the moment, Sutton, because they were weren't doing so great last season, and they seem to they've got off to a flyer with 2 wins. But what's been surprising as well is that Carlisle they drew at the weekend, but they also lost in their first game of the season. I was expecting them. It still is only 2 games though, but I was expecting them to be sort of up there at the top, with 6 points. So it is a little bit of a surprise that they've only got 1 point so far. But I suspect this will change. So
yeah, I noted that Carlisle's opening game of the season was a defeat to Worthing, which is the longest journey in the league, first game up. So that was a real surprise result, and probably something that Carlisle fans, we've been waiting all summer for this kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I think in their minds, they're thinking it's got to be the title this year. And then to start off by losing to a newly promoted team who, have come all that way. That's pretty incredible. CJ, any National League nuggets that we're forgetting from your side?
No, I just want to talk about our friends at the Laithwaite and our best friend Craig Ross, and how wonderful it's going for him at the moment, and how delighted I am to see that slippery slope at the moment. And hopefully it continues. But no, I think a couple of shocks for me is obviously like Wheelstone, obviously with Gary Waddock in charge. I thought they would have really kickstarted the season. I thought with him having a full summer under his belt to get his recruitment done, I thought they would have and the way he likes to play his football, really attacking front foot football. Worthing, I think, will probably be the team to look out for. I think they will be in amongst it. Hingelwood doesn't really do mid-table comfortable, so I think they'll be one of the surprise teams this year in and around the playoffs. And then I think Boston winning after us, I was quite shocked. I thought they were really poor against us, so for them to pop up with another result actually shocks me a little bit. But yeah, look, with 2 games in, it could mean nothing. It's a weird situation looking at the league table as it stands. Like Sutton United 3rd. Like I remember playing them last year and we battered them. Do you know what I mean? So like it just shows you what almost a summer of recruitment does, and just a fresh season and a break. So look, like there's lots of games to play now. Eastleigh popping out of a win. I thought they would be towards the bottom end of the table. If you look at like what they've recruited and stuff, like I didn't think much of them. And teams will say that about us as well. So I think if you go on the grand scheme of things, it'll in the next 5 games it will start to even itself out a little bit. I think definitely after 10. So look. It's early doors, but that 24th spot looks wonderful at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. I guess we've got time to mention the other kind of big news in the week in the shots department, and also National League, I suppose. So what was this? This was the 12th. Oh well, yeah, we have got guys just mentioned the trees. We'll get around to the trees. That's all probably part of it, to be honest. So yes, last week clubs were placed under a transfer embargo. So yeah, who did we have? Fylde, Halifax, Aldershot Town, of course, Hornchurch, Morecambe, and Altrincham, sanctioned over non-compliance of the league's financial regulations following late submission of budgetary information. So that in itself was a little bit of a shock, but kind of follows on from April, where Shots were faced with another transfer embargo due to some admin issues at the club. So that was that did at least get a club statement. We are currently, I think we're nearly a week after the news broke, and I think we're off the list now. We're not a part of the transfer embargo list, but we've not received any statement to say, "Oh, this is what happened." Just to reassure you, like, yeah, made a mistake, or we forgot we needed this, because there's been a lot of conjecture elsewhere on Shotsweb and Facebook places, but where not everyone is looking that this is all sorted and this was sorted before and all these kind of things. So yeah, worth mentioning. Either of you have any thoughts to chip in on this, and the communication with the club? And Guy, if you want to launch in about the trees as well, just throw it in.
Well, I mean, just to say, I mean, as you pointed out, this we've had this happen back, several months ago. It was 6 months or so ago now as well. So the fact that it's happened a second time, doesn't spell well for us, does it? I mean, I don't want to be too critical because, of course, there are people do make mistakes, and but really we need to keep these deadlines in order. I mean, I guess the saving grace to this is whether or not we really are looking for any more players. I mean, I imagine that the bulk of our squad selection has been done. I mean, maybe I know Scotty Davies may have wanted one or two more, but I doubt that. I think what we have right now, most of the work's been done in May, June. And so the players that you are seeing right now are the ones that are going to see us through the season, unless, of course, we start to have injuries and we need to start getting loans in. But so I don't think in the great scheme of things, I don't think it really matters too much, the timing of this. Although, come on, guys, let's get our act together and let's just, make sure that we get things, to Company's House as and when they require, or sorry, the league as and when they require it. The other thing was just to say about the trees, because it went around on the podcast WhatsApp. It was also in the Shots supporters Facebook group. Dean Wood looking as if he'd been down, either up a chimney or down the mines. The day before the game on Saturday, saying, "Look, I've been doing some work, check it out." And he took a pic and he showed with his camera sort of the behind the turnstiles, and you could see that there were some trees chopped down. Now, I know that's also stimulated a bit of discussion on Shotsweb. Are those trees protected? Are they not? I mean, my personal feeling is that I always quite liked having sort of, the trees and the vegetation and the shrubbery. It's just a little bit sad to see them chopped down. Whether or not they had an order, I don't against that, I don't know. But I'd have to say that I did pat the somewhat sad looking trunk as on the way out and Dean out.
Yeah, well, I like that. There's a nice little tradition you can do now, patting the stump on the way back out of the ground. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know how many. I can't remember how big those trees actually were that were literally there. Obviously, now we're encroaching into the big daddy trees. Like, we're close. One more chainsaw and I'm going to hit the ceiling, because if we lose that landscape, I mean, I get, all the while we're in this pre-redevelopment world, those trees are staying, right? So yeah, I think we need some sort of referendum on those trees. I think it will come out. Yeah, I mean, it depends. If you look at that shots web thread, my God, I mean, there's swear words. The swear words popping around already. It's trees. Just to let everyone know, it is trees. I mean, I'm pretty passionate about them, but we can have a civilized debate, I think. CJ, your thoughts? Well, there we go. Embargo and trees. Who knew we were going to join these together? But what do you think?
Hey, look, fair play to him for getting it done. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was talking about it for a long time as the chairman. He went and done it himself. So, look, like, you can't knock the guy for trying, as much as everyone will. I mean, you can't knock him for getting things done. And I think it feels like a breath of fresh air, really. If you compare it to what it was like with Shahid and stuff like that. Like, Dean's come in, he's revamped the whole ground, even with a lick of blue paint. I'm surprised that hasn't been a topic of conversation. The more blue paint that's come up, but and it was interesting to see Dean's comment about it being blue was cheaper. And I really like that comment, that blue was cheaper, so that, like, stair rails are now blue rather than red. So, look, there's a lot of little things to talk about. If we're gonna pick holes in trees, we're gonna do it in everything. But look, it's a fresh start, and I think the ground needed a little bit of rejuvenation. Whether it needed agricultural tree chopping, I don't know, but like we're in a fresh time now, so we needed a fresh start. So fresh trees, so those dead trees had to go. But yeah, I think look, it's the transfer embargo is what it is. It's just late paperwork. We weren't the only club to do it. It's not ideal, but it got sorted pretty quickly. So that I think that's the big thing from me, is that everything's been done efficiently. Obviously, taking away the deadline for that, but it was efficiently cleaned up afterwards. And everything behind the scenes has been done efficiently this year. And like watching on the TV, the ground looked fresher. It, like, with supporters in it, there was like almost 3,000 people in the ground. Obviously like you could say like there was no statements going out, but the chairman's probably the most vocal person on the Facebook group at the moment. So yeah, I think it's good to it's a good place to be in at the moment, with or without trees.
Yes, yeah, I did enjoy breath of fresh air. That's they are our lifeblood, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll get over it. But yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I think the official communication has been still not up to scratch. I don't know who. I don't know if there's just like one guy with a password that's not giving it over. But it seems like only one person can get in and put like match reports up and all this kind of stuff. Just a little. I mean, it's a literal like 150 words just to say, oh yeah, we did this. Don't have to blame anyone. I mean, as much as people want to call out the culprit on the shots web, I don't need to know. I just need to know that it won't happen again down the line, and I don't need to hear that from someone with chimney smoke on his face in a crackly video. Really, I just want to hear it from the club. But yeah, actually, on the stair rail thing and the colours, do you remember when they repainted the train bridge going over the high street? When they announced that, I was like, that's going to be so nice because it'll be red and blue. It'll be beautiful as you come in. And then it was blue and red, and I was like, what? So they've basically just done it South Western Railway colours, and they've not done anything to do with Aldershot. It's just the South Western Railway thing. Fuming. So I reckon they've had cheaper paint with the blue. And yeah, I for one, about 15 years later, am appalled. Anyway, that's enough from us. Thank you, Guy, and thank you, CJ.
Thank you.
As well.